Good evening and welcome to our meeting. This evening we're going to have our invocation by Chaplain Joseph Durham from the Clayton County Police Department and also a pastor at Fairview Baptist Church. It'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please stand with me.
Let's pray together. Father God, we want to take just a few moments to express our thanks to you. We thank you for freedom that we have. We thank you for the freedom to be able to gather in this place and to be able to make decisions about our community. We thank you, Lord, for family. We thank you for just the ability to have faith. We thank you for wisdom that you give and leadership. And we pray for our chairmen and commissioners that you would give them great wisdom and that you would lead them as they make decisions. And we pray for all who will be sharing tonight that you would guide them. And we just pray, Lord, that this meeting would be something that honors you and glorifies you. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening to everyone and welcome to the July 17, 2018 regular business meeting. The first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Does any member want to offer any amendments? Hearing none, may we?
Commissioner Evans.
Yes. The appointment to the Board of Appeals, item number 10, I'd like to hold that. I hadn't had a chance to speak with Dr. Hill.
I've already spoken. Mr. Chair, I've already spoken with Dr. Hill, and he wants to be reappointed, and so I'm ready to move forward.
All right, you still want to, okay, I got a motion to remove item 10. Is there a second on it?
Second.
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 3-2, it passes. Any other changes, amendments, deletions? Hearing none. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion to adopt the agenda with the approved amendment, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Approval of the July 3rd, 2018 regular business meeting minutes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention, 4 approvals. Passes.
The next two items are proclamations that the board will present this evening. The first, the county recognizes Joshua Lodge, number 9, Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge, as presented by Commissioner Warner. Will Mr. James Ferguson, as well as members and family friends, please come forward as the commissioners join you for the presentation of the proclamation. And now the reading of the proclamation.
Clayton County recognizes Joshua Lodge Number 9, Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge. Whereas Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge is a not-for-profit organization consisting of men and women that are committed to improve the quality of life in our Clayton County communities. Its mission is to develop and implement programs to strengthen the community by promoting life skills and awareness to ensure healthy environments, to achieve and maintain honor, morality, respect, and integrity. And whereas through its sponsorship of community activities, a coalition has been developed between other organizations and individuals in the community, enhancing the successful training, leadership programs, and life skills that are essential to the growth and development of productive environments. And whereas the organization's charitable acts and volunteerism have provided avenues and strategies to effectively facilitate successful programs that go hand in hand with the vision of its organizational dreams and goals, attaining immeasurable positive accomplishments within our communities. And whereas Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge support spans throughout Clayton County, wherein they have sponsored, actively participated, and donated to the refugee homeless shelter, Toys for Tots, Back to School book bag and supplies, annual community drive, Joshua Lodge and Women of Faith Number 4, barbecue fundraiser, and the Stand Up Clayton Stop the Violence, among many others. And whereas Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge organization realized the need for strong life skills and leadership programs as a necessity to build quality men and women who are dedicated to the standards of brotherly love, inclusive of leadership and life skill programs, teaching goal setting, time management, social skills, morality, honor, and integrity. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Clayton County Board of Commissioners, I, Felicia Franklin Warner, Commissioner, ask that you join me in honoring Most Worshipful James Ferguson Grand Lodge, Masonic Brotherhood, and Order of the Eastern Stars Incorporated for their Clayton County community activism and support. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of Clayton County, Georgia, to be affixed this 17th day of July in the year 2018. Felicia Franklin Warner, Commissioner.
My friend and this lodge, we go to church together, and as soon as I got in office, he said, whatever you need, we will do. So you have been at every event. You've gotten books together for children. You've fed children, and it's just been a pleasure to work with this amazing organization. Thank you so very much. Thank you to each of you.
Thank you very much.
In the last proclamation for this evening, Clayton County recognizes Reverend Jeff Hood, activist and native son of Clayton County, as presented by Commissioner Gregory. If Reverend Hood, as well as family or friends, please come forward. Now the reading of the proclamation.
Clayton County Board of Commissioners honors the work of Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood, July 17, 2018. Whereas Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood is a product of Clayton County, Georgia, from his upbringing on Rex Road to his education in Clayton County Public Schools, Lake Harbin Elementary, Adamson Middle School, and Jonesboro High School, to his spiritual nurture based on the teachings of prophets throughout the region, to his connection in Clayton County Fire Department. Dr. Hood has Clayton County deep in his bones, and whereas a graduate of Auburn University, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Emory University's Candler School of Theology, University of Alabama, and Creighton University. Dr. Hood has also earned a doctorate at Bright Divinity School at Texas Christian University with a focus in liberation theology. In addition to his studies, Dr. Hood was ordained in 2006 to the ministry here in Clayton County at the Rock Baptist Church. Currently, the Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood is a Baptist pastor, theologian, and activist living and working in Texas. And whereas Dr. Hood is the author of 18 books, including his latest, The Execution of God. In 2016, Dr. Hood's book, The Courage to be Queer, was named the third best religion book of the year at the Independent Publishers Book Awards. In addition to writing books, Dr. Hood's work has appeared extensively in the media, including the New York Times, the Dallas Morning News, Huffington Post, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Los Angeles Times, Wired Magazine, and also on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR networks, amongst a host of other outlets. And whereas Dr. Hood has served in the governing leadership of multiple organizations, including the Texas Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty and Fellowship of Reconciliation USA. In 2013, Dr. Hood was awarded PFLAG Fourth Worth's Equality Award for Activism and Service for the LGBTQ community. In 2015, Dr. Hood was named Hope for Peace and Justice's Ambassador of Justice for his theological activism, and also in 2016, the Next Generation Action Network's Person of the Year for his work against police brutality. A participant in history, Dr. Hood organized and led the July 7, 2016 peaceful protest against police brutality that unfortunately resulted in the deaths of 5 Dallas police officers. Dr. Hood possibly saved countless lives by using the cross he was carrying to get people away from the shooting. For multiple days, Dr. Hood did countless interviews while he and his family were under constant threat and under constant protection by the police. To commemorate Dr. Hood's role in the shooting and his work, the archives at the Dallas Public Library recently opened the Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood Collection. With 3 arrests and thousands of miles of marching under his belt, Dr. Hood says he is not afraid to step into the shoes of Jesus and give his body for justice. With deep soul, Dr. Hood refuses to stop. In addition to being the husband of Emily and father of Jeff III, Philip, Quinley, Mandela, Lucas, and Madeline, Dr. Hood also maintains a close friendship with multiple death row prisoners. Now, therefore I, Sona Singleton Gregory, Commissioner, District 1, on behalf of the Clayton County Board of Commissioners, do hereby honor and recognize Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood for the work he does throughout the nation. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and have caused the seal of Clayton County, Georgia, to be affixed this 17th day of July in the year 2018. Commissioner Sona Singleton Gregory.
You know, it's always a dangerous thing to give a Baptist preacher a microphone. I am so pleased to be able to stop by tonight. I'm thankful for growing up here in Clayton County, thankful for the work of my father, Chief Jeff Hood. I remember everybody getting elected. I remember all the squabbles over the years, and I'm very thankful. But one person I did want to thank very quickly is a woman by the name of Miss Ellington. Miss Ellington was my first grade teacher at Lake Harbor Elementary School. Miss Ellington was also the first black teacher at Lake Harbor Elementary School. And at that time, it was, still a very difficult thing to be black in Clayton County. And sorry, more difficult. And she really started me on this path of understanding that activism and spirituality go together, and that the gospel of Jesus Christ can bring about deep and abiding change in our world. And so I just want to let y'all know, to encourage y'all. I know people talk a lot of mess on Clayton County. I live in Texas, but I see it on the message boards, the comments, and all that kind of stuff. But what I want you to know and to be encouraged is this is a wonderful place. This is a place of deep spirituality, deep activism, and a place where deep change is occurring throughout the world because of your work. Lastly, I'm so thankful for my commissioner. I haven't been a full-time resident of Clayton County in about 16 years, 15 years. This commissioner has been my commissioner no matter where I've lived. After the shooting, one of the first folks to send me a message and ask if I was okay was this commissioner right here. And so, like I said, it is my joy and my pleasure to stop by and champion the county, and also to champion my commissioner and chairman, board. I appreciate all the work y'all do. I don't know if you hear that enough, but I saw some protesters when I came in, so it should be lively tonight. So thank y'all.
The board will now consider the consent agenda.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second of Mr. Chair.
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Do we have Mr. Hancock, do you have a question?
No.
Oh.
The board will now consider the request of Director of Human Resources, Pamela Ambles.
Good evening, Clayton County citizens. Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Human Resources, in collaboration with Parks and Recreation and Senior Services, is requesting approval of the employee discount policy. The policy will provide discounts to Clayton County employees on services offered by Parks and Recreation and Senior Services. The policy highlights the services offered, outlines a procedure in which to utilize the services, and provide other pertinent information. And we thank you for your consideration.
Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Here.
Can I just say thank you so very much? Because when I first got in office, that's the call I kept getting about, can we do something for the employees? So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Any other questions, statements? Hearing none, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
It's four. Commissioner Hambrick stepped out, so it's 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next four items are board appointments.
Okay, next is an appointment to the library board to fill the unexpired term of the late Miss Brenda Stiggers. Term expires on June 30th, 2020, full board appointment. there any recommendations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recommend or nominate Ms. Lily Golden.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next appointment is to the Zoning Advisory Group to fill the expiring term of Ms. Ray James. The term is 3 years, expiring on August 19th, 2021. Full board appointment. Are there any recommendations?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I would like
Commissioner
to,
Warner.
yes, sir. I would like to reappoint Ms. Ray James.
I'll second that motion. Those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. Next is also appointment to the Zoning Advisory Group to fill the expiring term of Mr. Casey Watts. Term is 3 years, expiring on August 19th, 2021 for board appointment. Any recommendations?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gregory.
That Mr. Watts continue serving on his own advisory board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hambrick. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next 5 items are zoning public hearings. The first, the applicant is James Erie, and the request is for rezoning. This is for the continued use of storage of tractor-trailer trucks. The subject property is located at 2124 Forest Parkway, Morrow, Georgia. The planning and zoning staff, as well as ZAG, are recommending denial. This is District 1, Commissioner Gregory's district.
Is the applicant here? Please come forward, sir. Please take the podium. Please, for the record, state your name.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Carl Westmoreland. My address is 3343 Peachtree Road, Atlanta. Mr. Iron and Mr. James, who are the owners of the property, are also here tonight. This involves about a 6 1/3 acre property on Forest Parkway. It's been a trucking terminal since the 1970s. Until 2008, it was zoned light industrial. At that time, it was changed to mixed use. The owners were unaware of it, but when they became aware of it in 2012, they filed an application to change the property back to light industrial. That was denied with the staff at the time, making the comment that you really don't need to rezone because it would continue as a legally non-conforming use, and that was all fine. Then last year, the county amended your ordinance to provide that you lose a legal non-conforming use on sale of property. They now have the property under contract, and rather than, I've talked to Mr. Hancock about it, but rather than raising the issue of whether that provision in the code was valid, we thought it was simpler and cleaner just to file an application to go back to the light industrial zoning, so that's what we've done. We have given the staff information. The Georgia EPD has accepted this site as a brownfield on the condition that it not be used for residential. We have Tom Harper here, who has provided some of the environmental information to the county. He can address this in a lot more detail than I can. Essentially, it is an environmental problem with the plume for groundwater coming from Fort Gillem. You really can't do anything else with the property. We think it's appropriate to continue the use that it's had for the last 40 years. And so I will be glad to answer questions, as will Mr. Harper or the owners of the property. But we're asking you to approve the rezoning request that we filed to go back to light industrial. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Westmoreland?
Correct, thank you.
Any questions from the board? Okay, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this applicant's request?
I would like to make a statement.
Come take the podium, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners,
State your name.
Mickey Garber, unincorporated, Clayton County, Rex, Georgia. I'm not here to recommend approval nor denial. I'm only here speaking to bring awareness. These people are asking for changes in the zoning, and that's what we have a problem with in Clayton County, of being zoned one thing and done another thing on the property, putting people who own residents, especially, at a disposition. And I want you to keep in mind that if there are any people residences living around this, what they're talking about of the property. I know nothing about it. I'm not here to deny them or to approve. I just want you to be aware of what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody here want to speak to or for or against the request? Okay, who's district?
It's
Commissioner
mine.
Gregory.
Yes, sir. I know the ZAG board recommended denial. However, as the gentleman had pointed out, and I've done my research on this, the current zoning is not good for residential to, I was a part of the group a few years ago when we discussed that runoff from Fort Gillum and the danger that it provided, and right now is current zoning is not compatible according to all that we've researched. And so with this, I'm gonna ask that we approve the petition, the petitioner's request to change this zoning. And that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any questions? Hearing none, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
The next two zoning applications, if the board does not have any objections, we could take those two together. The applicant for both is John Jordan. The request on the first application is for rezoning. On the second is for a conditional use permit. The subject property is located at 1504 Commercial Court, Jonesboro, Georgia. Planning and zoning staff as well as ZAG are recommending approval with condition for both petitions. This is District 3, Commissioner Franklin Warner.
Applicant, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Jordan. I'm the applicant for this item. I'm representing TJ McGinnis, who's the owner of the property at 1504 Commercial Court. TJ is here with us tonight. We're requesting that Mr. McGinnis's property be rezoned back to general business, GB, from the current zoning of mixed use. We'd also request, along with that, a conditional use permit be approved for the operation under the GB district for a forklift rental business. Mr. McGinnis purchased the property from Truett Cathy's estate back in January of 2017 when it was still zoned as general business, just like the properties surrounding it. Planning and zoning actually show this property was zoned GB going all the way back to 1992. In May of 2017, just a couple of months after my client purchased the property, there was as you know, a countywide comprehensive rezoning, which actually rezoned a good portion of Terra Boulevard to mixed use. This also included our property and a lot of properties on intersecting small roads off of Terra Boulevard that were previously zoned general business. Comprehensive rezonings, as you know, look at the county on a macro level, and it's after that that adjustments will inevitably need to be made on depending on the property on a case-by-case basis, and we believe this is one of those cases that deserve that adjustment. The property is a 1.22 acre property at the end of the cul-de-sac on Commercial Court. Commercial Court is a side road that intersects a more intensely used area of Terra Boulevard. It's right across from the Water Authority Treatment Center. There is a 5,000 square foot building on the property already that on the left-hand side has a dedicated office space. It has a restroom, has a lobby. On the right side, there's more of a larger garage / warehouse there as well. Mr. McGinnis has a tenant that would like to use the property for his forklift rental business. The property would be used primarily for office and administrative purposes, but the forklifts that aren't being rented at the time, of course, would be kept in the garage / warehouse area. The property is perfect for this type of use. It's move-in ready for the tenant now, and no new improvements are being planned for the property except for any code upgrades that the county code requires, of course. but nothing by the tenant or the owner himself outside of that. The proposed use is identical to the trade uses on Commercial Court that have been operating for decades and are still operating as such. These include heating and air businesses, a plumbing business, a welding business, a printing company, and a public alcohol treatment center. Although the use would be mostly office and administrative, taking orders and arranging for delivery of the forklift rentals, because the business involves forklifts, it's not a permitted use under the current mixed-use classification. The requested general business classification would permit it as a conditional use and would still be consistent with the purpose and intent of the Clayton County zoning ordinance, especially with the future land use map still showing the property as general business. Given the surrounding trade business uses, the type of property improvements already on the property, as well as the property being located on an arterial cul-de-sac road off a more intensely used area of Terra Boulevard, this property we don't believe is usable under the current mixed-use classification. Staff has already recommended approval of this item, and Zoning Advisory Group has also recommended approval, and we would respectfully request that this board approve the same. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer, or Mr. McGinnis would be glad to answer.
All right, any questions for Mr. Jordan
From the board. Okay.
from the board?
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Where I do concur with you on what you've stated, I'm going to actually have to hold this item because I have brought it up in
Hold on a second, hold on a second.
What, we
Oh,
gotta wait?
Excuse me, go ahead.
I just want to
Go ahead.
explain it.
Go
Can I
ahead,
do
go
that?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Because this part has nothing to do with the vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the bottom line is, you mentioned the treatment center. This board voted to move that center there, to basically to swap land with the city of Jonesboro. And they reached out to me some time ago, and I spoke with our attorney about it. And that's why I held it last meeting. So unfortunately, until we can get the zoning right, then I cannot support it until we can get that entire area zoned properly. And furthermore, I actually asked for it to remain as it was, and somehow it got changed to mixed use. But that's what happens when you don't get the final zoning the day that you're voting on it to kind of go through it. So I do apologize in advance, but I wanted you to understand where I stand on that, because we need to fix that entire area. And it's unfortunate, but we got to go through that process, and I want everybody to be able to do business in that area, because as you mentioned, it is in line with what's being used over there. So we're going to get it right, but it won't be tonight, approximately, as far as I'm concerned, okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Evans.
I have a question for legal. Are we allowed to hold a zoning matter without the acquiescence of the petitioner?
We've done it before.
Mr. Hancock. Mr. Hancock, take the mic.
Once you've conducted the public hearing, you have held it before, but you've held it with the acquiescence of the petitioner. I don't know whether they're willing to do it or not. You can certainly ask them if they're willing to do it once you have a second to the motion, I guess, to hold.
Excuse me. How is this different from when we were dealing with Fitzgerald Road? Because that got held several times, and I held it. So why was it different? Please educate me.
It was held with the acquiescence of the petitioners, I believe, and I don't remember Fitzgerald Road with specifics. Don't remember whether it was held by after the public hearing or before.
We had, so I do remember distinctively because everybody from Fitzgerald Road came, and it was held by the board. So I'm a little bit concerned with why do answers change sometimes. So, and I just wanted to be fair to you to tell you where I stand on it. And for the record, I want to say that it's very interesting that, you know, any other time, commissioners don't have any comments to say about anything going on in other people's district. But the first person to ask a question was one particular commissioner. And so I have concerns because we've had conversations. I'm so sorry. So we're going to get it right, sir. I promise you we are. But I am asking those that did the zoning and the rezoning to get it right as I originally requested. And then you wouldn't be going through this. So we're going to get it right.
Okay, so Mr. Hancock, procedurally, she's made a motion to hold it, and we would have to get a second and move on that before we find out if he's in agreement with.
You need a second for it to even be on the
Okay,
floor.
I'm gonna second the motion.
Okay, then my recommendation would be that you at least request as to whether or not they would be willing to acquiesce in it being held. They did that the last time that it was before the board a month ago. And the Commissioner and I have discussed on several occasions the bringing into consistency everything in commercial court. And there have been several discussions with regard to that, and I think that is moving forward to cause that to happen. It's just a question of whether or not you want to move forward with this application separately from those. And of course, the board, as we've done in the past, if the board on its own motion wants to rezone the other properties on commercial court, then you'd need to direct the zoning advisor, the zoning administrator to initiate that process. Those have been the discussions that have taken place.
And Mr. Chair, if I may add, and thank you for stating that, that's the reason I'm taking this stance, because almost 30 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, and I think Clayton is here. Excuse me, 1 second. No, I see you out there, Mr. John, the gentleman behind you. I'm sorry. Can I call him up to
What are
ask
we
him a
calling
question?
him up for?
I need an answer to a question, if you don't mind. It's
Related
dealing with
to-
this.
related to
Yes,
this?
this whole area. Yes, sir.
I'll entertain it. Come on up.
Because it's important for it to become on record, because it
As long
goes.
as this has something that's
Yes, sir, it
relevant or
does.
germane to what we're speaking about.
Can you please share with me or the board and put it on record how long ago you called Clayton County about the issue of not having the zoning that you needed to move forward with expanding or giving others opportunity with your, in the same area?
First, state your name.
My name's
and your
John
business.
Hewitt. I'm a resident of Jonesboro, Georgia. Been in Clayton County my whole life and do business in this county. We first became aware of the effect that the zoning change had on us in May.
Of
We
2018
took
or
possession of
2017?
2018. We took possession of the property approximately on November the 1st, 2017, thanks to Mr. Turner, your assistance, and started showing the available portion of the building, the 18,000 square foot building that we took possession of. We don't have need for such space, so we started marketing the property. And I am a realtor and an expert in commercial and residential real estate in Clayton County. It became clear that the current zoning was not amenable to acquiring a tenant, frankly. It's a mixed, it's an industrial street. There's a welding company, 2 air conditioning companies, 2 large warehouses. There's a plumbing company that's been there for 30 years. It's an industrial street. It's not intended for mixed use where there could be retail shops or university centers, child care centers. There is no road frontage on Terra Boulevard. There's no sign, very little signage. I will correct myself. We need the old zoning back. And I'm sure Mr. McGinnis would agree that the current zoning has hampered his efforts with a ready, willing, and able tenant who I have had personal discussion with that's ready to do business, but they can't open. And
The question, sir, how long ago did you contact my office?
May of 2018.
All right, that's what I wanted to state.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would it be in order to continue the public hearing before taking the vote to hold it?
No, we're gonna take a vote first. We've got a motion in a second.
It remains.
I got a question for Mr. Jordan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
After hearing what you've heard thus far, what would you be willing to agree to hold?
Is that to hold indefinitely, or is there a time frame that we're looking at, or?
We got a time frame.
Commissioner.
There is a time frame in place. There should be a time frame in place to get this right. And I don't think you even had to ask that, but go ahead.
The concern with that is we have a tenant at bay, and we were asked to to hold it last meeting as
I
well, which we
understand.
we wanted to help and do that, and I'm not sure if we're any closer to fixing the problem or not. You know, the tenant's just waiting to take possession, and as the previous speaker kind of substantiated, it's essentially when it was rezoned to a mixed use, that essentially affected a taking of the properties, because you cannot, it's not conducive to it.
If they rezone this, does it keep them from rezoning other properties? Because I've already spent tens of thousands of dollars, I'm losing thousands.
That's the other concern, is that if we're trying to get it right, back to what it was, you know, it shouldn't be on the back of thousands of dollars of one individual property. I'm not sure if there's a way to get at least the application fee back or anything like that, but you know, waiting indefinitely, I don't think we can agree to that. If we want to wait, if you think that it'll be fixed in a month or two, then we might consider that.
Well, I think the objective here is to make sure we get it right. So I really couldn't, unless the commissioner knows something I don't, can put an exact or specific time frame on it. But that, again, I'm just asking before we go forward with the vote. So.
Let me just check with my client real quick.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Emerson.
For legal and maybe community development, I know we've had 2 comprehensive rezonings countywide in the last 18 months. Is there an upcoming rezoning or zoning ordinance rewrite that I'm not aware of? The commissioner alluded to a comprehensive rezoning in the near future. I'm not aware of any actions towards that. Is there something I don't know?
Not that I'm aware of. The method for accomplishing what the commissioner is asking for would be and you've done this recently, would be a direction from the board for the board-generated or board-initiated rezoning of property, which the ordinance provides for and permits, and conferring with the zoning administrator, that should be able to be on the board's agenda by the September meeting, because the notice requirements and the Board of Zoning Appeals, it would have to go through. So that would be your time frame. Second meeting in September, which would be your zoning meeting, would be the time frame. So we're talking about 60 more days. This board, however, would need to take a vote to direct the zoning administrator to initiate that process for the properties. I'm assuming what you're talking about is everything that is on Commercial Court that are all developed. So that's your time frame.
The point between this board giving direction and the advertising requirement necessary to have this in September would be the window of time whereby the community development and planning and zoning staff would do whatever analysis or study and put in whatever parcel zoning category updates countywide, and that could be unlimited amount of time? From the point that we say we want to do a comprehensive map to the point where there is a map to advertise.
This is not a comprehensive.
No, it's not.
This is a parcel this would be just like an applicant filing for rezoning. It's like the.
But it would just be for that corridor, that neighborhood,
It would just be for that,
street.
yeah, those properties on Commercial Court.
Okay.
That would be the process.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to prolong this, and I feel your anguish and your pain. Please understand this. The hard part that I'm dealing with right now is that when we did this comprehensive zoning change, I gave direct orders when I took time out of my day to meet with those that were hired to do this and gave specific instructions on what I felt was best in that district. So I took you into consideration, and I did not put this zoning in place. But unfortunately, because the day we took that vote, I was not given that opportunity to even look at it to make sure that you wouldn't have to be here today. But yet and still, I asked for this to be corrected back in May. So it's a 60 days, and I gave direct direction via email, and you can pull it up. This looks like it's an error. It needs to be corrected. So I'm in a difficult situation because I have another person, as you saw him come forward, who had stated that, hey, y'all moved us by no means of us. You know, we didn't have a choice. You swapped land with Jonesboro, you moved us here. Now we're in this big space. We need to be able to move and be able to survive in this space. So all I'm asking is that whatever it is that we need to do to make sure that you could do business as well as Clayton can do business. For me, it's about equitability. It really is, and doing it right the first time. You shouldn't be in this situation, neither should they. And I apologize to you as an elected official that you're even here today.
Twice.
I don't know what else to do, and it's only for that corridor, but it should have been done right because I gave specific instructions for it to remain like it was.
And from my understanding, just for clarity purposes, till September. September 1st, first meeting in September.
Second meeting in
Second
September is your
meeting.
zoning.
Second meeting in
Okay.
September.
That's when the
Earliest.
earliest that the others could be considered.
Okay, that's your time frame, sir.
We gotta take a vote.
Yeah, I'm just asking whether or not
So
they
just to
would
finish
agree.
my question, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr.
Chairman.
Evans.
So whether or not that took place at its earliest in September or not wouldn't have anything to do with this particular parcel being rezoned at the request. This parcel could be rezoned now, and the surrounding parcels could be done at the earliest in September.
trust that.
One wouldn't affect the other, is that true?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you, no further questions.
I definitely agree, obviously, that it needs to be done right. And we have the opportunity to, at least for the property in question tonight, to do that, to fix this one lot right, and then come back and you can fix the other lots. But just kind of kicking the can down the road month to month is jeopardizing the tenant, it's jeopardizing my client's property rights. And I just want to emphasize that this application is for this one property. This is not about the Clayton House or the other properties, though I definitely feel their anguish. There's an opportunity before the board tonight to get this one property right.
Yeah, I think it may be. Question is, Mr. Hancock, is this something that we're gonna vote to hold and then come back out after executive session and discuss as far as, well, it's real estate, though, not our real estate,
No,
so
sir.
I don't
It's
think
not
it is a
something you can
subject we can
discuss in
discuss,
executive
yeah.
session.
Just take the vote, and then it'll be what it's gonna be.
Well, I'm waiting to hear from Mr. Jordan. Did you have a comment, any other comment before I take a vote? I'm just trying to be
No, I
fair
just-
to you to
No, I
get you
appreciate it.
to.
I appreciate it. I just asked the board to consider the application that's in front of it in this one property.
One other question, Mr. Chair, because we got to get it right. What can I do in terms of a surety? Because you even heard Madam Commissioner to the right of me stating that she felt there were some things done that were not in order with or consistent with that area.
I just wanted to simply change that zoning, and just like in the past, any zonings that we change are based on what they were done in the past.
Okay, so I'm gonna restate that. It was stated that because of the surrounding area, that there was a vote taken to allow it to go back to industrial, light industrial. It's the same situation here. So what do I have, or what assurity do I have that the people that we got working for this county gonna do their job and do what they're supposed to do? What assurity do I have of that? Because I'm sorry. What can we put in place to ensure that if we approve this tonight, if I could finish talking, what can we put in place to ensure that we approve this tonight, that we're gonna go back to, as you stated, and that we're not gonna all have amnesia later on? What's my assurance?
I'm not quite sure who you're talking about regarding amnesia. And I'm going to respect you as a commissioner and not discuss what our conversations have been
That's
about
fine.
this property. But you as a board have the ability to vote to direct the zoning administrator to initiate a rezoning application for any parcels of property that you want to. At that point in time, the zoning administrator will begin the process. It will be handled exclusively by their office. They will schedule the hearings and give the notices. It will come before the board of the zoning advisory group and subsequently will come to you. Whether or not you can get 3 votes to do it or not is not an issue that I can have anything to do with. But that is the process, and if a motion is made to direct them to do that, then that is your assurance that this board has given that direction.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so I'm going to withdraw my motion. And tonight I'm going to make a motion, I'm sorry, can we
If you're
draw?
gonna withdraw it, then we're gonna need to ask, it's still a public meeting,
Okay.
a public hearing. So at this time, I'll ask if there's anybody who wanna speak for or against the request to come forward. Anybody?
I got something to say.
Well, come on up, Mr. Garvin. And please, please, make sure it's relevant to the request at hand.
Mickey Garber, unincorporated Rex, Georgia. And again, I bring before the commission, commissioners, why we're having this problem with this situation is our zoning is not clearly defined. And Ms. Werner, you asked what assurances you have if you pass this tonight and get these people moving along their way. I have no problem with that. But the assuredness needs to be that if you don't get this cleared up, or the people responsible, some heads need to roll. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak for or against the request? Commissioner?
I just want to, I'm going to withdraw my original motion. We did that. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion that we do approve it. However, on record, I am on record instructing the Planning and Zoning Department to further go the process to redo all of it.
It's going to be separate. I'll second
Okay,
the
no
motion to
problem.
approve.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or statements? Hearing none, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Go ahead and make your secondary motion about.
And then I'm going to make a second motion. Mr. Chair said I had to take it second, so it's on record, so therefore there's no ambiguity in any conversations or emails, which are legal forms of communication, that I am instructing the Planning and Zoning Department to go and get this right. And get it right, as I instructed in email, that we look at this corridor regardless of what we feel a vote is or not. Bring it before the board. And the corridor is on Commercial Court off of Terra Boulevard.
That's got to be from a motion?
For the purpose of the record, could I request that the motion be that the Planning and Zoning Administrator initiate a rezoning of the property fronting on Commercial Court from its existing zoning of mixed use to a GB zoning. That will be very clear as to what the instructions are if the board approves of that the board is giving to the zoning administrator.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any questions? Hearing none, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Let's move on.
The next zoning public hearing, the applicant is Riverdale Land Group LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit for the development of a convenience store with a gasoline service station. The subject property is located at 6118 Riverdale Road, Riverdale, Georgia. The Planning and Zoning as well as ZAG are recommending denial. This is District 2, Commissioner Hambrick's district.
Please come on out.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michelle Battle with Battle Law. I'm not sure who. Give that card. It's fine. I wanted to make sure we put that as well. And you want another? I don't know if she needs this card. Sorry about that. I had to get my notes out. Again, Michelle Battle with Battle Law representing the applicant. This particular property at 6118 has quite a history over the past probably about 20 plus years. The property had actually originally been a part of a larger tract of land, which was roughly 23.838 acres. This is the property with its frontage on Riverdale Road. And at the time, this property was owned by a company called G&I Development, who acquired the property in 2001. And at the time that they acquired the property, they made the determination to build the Meadow Springs apartments that are located on Riverdale Road. And you can see that from this. This is the Meadow Springs apartment complex right here. After the Meadow Springs apartments were developed in 2003, G&I actually sold 2 of the out parcels to Riverdale Capital Investments in 2003 for development. So it was really intended that this project was, in essence, a mixed-use project. It was the multifamily component with 2 out parcels that were to be in front for commercial development. And at some point after 1992, the properties were actually rezoned to neighborhood mixed use. I actually questioned that. I think that it was actually commercial mixed use before, but nonetheless, according to staff, that change occurred in roughly 2008 when the board apparently approved rezoning the property to neighborhood mixed use. At that time, you would certainly think, of course, at the time when the market crashed, that this might help to spur some type of development on this particular piece of property, and inclusive of the property on the other side, which were both owned by by Riverdale Capital. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. That mixed-use development designation did nothing for those 2 locations. They remained undeveloped, as they currently are undeveloped now. And after 2008, when the market crashed, then Grey Goose Partners, the lender on the property, actually took over after foreclosure on those 2 lots. And Grey Goose continued to own that property until my client, well, actually, let me interject one more thing, until 2016, when another party came before this board to ask for the rezoning of these lots and a use permit to allow for a gas station. And at that time, you all denied that application. So I have to be transparent about what has transpired up to this point. My client then came in December of 2017 and acquired both parcels, that being this tract here, as well as this the tract that's before you now, which is 6118 Riverdale Road. Ali Ayaz is a developer who develops primarily retail properties as well as convenience stores with gas pumps. The convenience store and gas pumps, he feels, is an intricate part of the development because it allows for an anchor on the site. He builds typically a 5,000 square foot model, similar in terms of its ability to compete with larger convenience stores such as Racetrack and QT, and believes that his product is equally as nice in terms of its interior. It will be offering hot food and much of the same amenities that you would find in these other types of convenience stores with gas pumps. We believe that this site is appropriate for this particular use. I mean, if you really look at what has transpired in this particular area, you will see that the county has certainly spent some time with the redevelopment of the senior center. You've got the fire station, I believe it is, across the street. But when you look at the Meadow Springs apartments as well as some of the other apartments along that particular corridor, they are not necessarily in the greatest of shape, but at the same time, they are residents that are living there, that are thriving there. And what this particular applicant is looking to do is to initially develop the 6118 side of the two out parcels in order to generate some interest. There would also be, in addition to the 5,000 square foot store, there would be an additional 5,000 square feet in retail space that he would have on the site as well. And then he would come back after that was developed and develop the other side. So it's his intent to develop both sides. It was my hope that I would have had the opportunity to meet with Commissioner Hambrick. I know that you're extremely busy. We had reached out to your office and we had reached out to staff at various times to try and set up an appointment. I'm not sure, quite honestly, after both the planning department and ZAG have recommended denial, what you are going to do this evening. But I certainly would appreciate the opportunity to come in and meet with you about these sites because my client is not going away. He is going to be there. He is going to develop these sites. He doesn't simply want to hold them. He is a developer. So this is an opportunity for something we believe positive to come in front of those apartment complex and to bring something positive along that corridor, which has had very little new development other than the development that the county has recently done. We know that the property was rezoned as a part of your mass rezoning back in March because initially we had requested a rezoning along with the use permit. We were able to drop the rezoning component and simply go for the conditional use permit. And so with that, we would respectfully request either approval this evening or tabling to allow for us the opportunity for myself and my client to come and meet with you and discuss what your vision is for the particular area and see whether or not we can find some synergy. He's very flexible with regards to layout, with regards to elevations, what you would want the site to look like. I think that there's an opportunity to do, again, something really positive along a corridor that has not had a lot of activity here of recent. And with that, I would respectfully, again, request either approval or recommendation for tabling. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Battle? Any questions from the board? All right, would anybody like to speak for or against this applicant's request? Yes, Ms. Battle.
Sorry, one thing I did pass out to you all, the constitutional allegations in order to preserve my client's rights upon appeal if unfortunately this is denied. Thank you.
Okay. Please take the podium.
Evening, Chairman, Commissioners, Rob Leatherwood, Riverdale, Georgia. I would like to echo what the Planning and Zoning and ZAG already said as denial, Commissioner. As you know the area intimately, we already have some gas stations down the street. We don't need, I would say they're probably maybe 200 yards, and there's 2 gas stations at that. And even with that, the gas stations that are there has been a history of crime and safety with those gas stations. So as much as we like to have new business, as much as we like to have new open retail next to a convenience store, there is plenty of empty retail space in our area already. So I would say it's more imperative that we fill those buildings first before we create other buildings that could potentially be empty for extended period of times. And so again, you know, we have the new library that's planning on going up right there. We don't need to create any hazardous situations with people coming and going, especially since we don't have sidewalks there. But again, just echoing what Planning and Zoning and ZAG already said, if you could just deny that request, and maybe let's reach out to the developer and see what they can do to work with us to bring businesses that we do need and repurpose that land for what would be a truly value asset for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Benoit.
Good evening, Jeffrey Benoit, Clayton County. I'd like to also echo what the zoning board has said and what the gentleman, prior speaker, just said, that we vote to deny this particular petition. We have to look at what is our gas stations per capita in a square mile. They're often on top of each other with this extra added space, convenience space that is not even used, or it's a chicken hot wing spot or something like that for 4, 5, 6 months, and then it's gone. All up and down Mount Zion. I know we're talking about 2 different locations, but I'm just giving a rendition, a picture of what happens. Now, there is some that does have a good return on its dollar and on its investment, but more so than like, we see them becoming a blight to our community, and the only thing that they can do is push out gas and fast food, creating a hangout for our undesirables, or what would be undesirables, causing a problem with our community. What is our per capita as to how many gas stations can be within 1 mile area? I would ask that the board consider that, consider what is already there, and again, repurpose it for a better and higher use, but deny this particular petition because it's only going to add to what is already there, and a lot of that is not desirable. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? No. Well, let me move on then. Commissioner Hambrick.
Yes, thanks for the comments that were made, or whatever, and I would like to meet with you or your client for other uses, you know, of that property, of that space and all. But right now, I agree with the zoning board and all for denial. So my motion is to not deny the petition.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions, statements? Hearing none. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
And the last zoning public hearing for this evening, the applicant is Scott Butler. The request is for a modification to the final plat of the Embassy Trace subdivision, Phase 2, to convert the existing open space into 2 single-family lots. The subject property is located at Highway 138 in Embassy Trace, Riverdale, Georgia. The planning and zoning staff recommends approval. The zoning advisory group recommends denial. This is District 2, Commissioner Hambrick's district.
Good evening, Commissioner and Board. I'm here to seek modification of the plat.
Please state your name.
Oh, Scott Butler. I live in Gwinnett County, Georgia, with Century Communities. Embassy Trace is a development with 2 phases, and we have recorded the plat for both phases. When the project was developed back in 2005, 2006, the lots in questions, 54 and 55, were lots to be developed. They were on the development plan that was approved, and they were developed as lots. After the recession in 2008, one of the lenders took back the property through foreclosure, and the history's kind of vague on it. We weren't involved in the property at the time. But they rezoned the property for Phase 2, and in doing so, they removed these 2 lots from the plat during that zoning. We purchased the property last year, redeveloped the property, got it cleaned up, recorded the plat for Phase 1, and also recorded the plat for Phase 2. When we were working to have some conditions changed for Phase 2, we sought to add these 2 lots to the plat, and it was discovered that the application did not specifically address the addition of these 2 lots. It just used the word reconfiguring lots, so it was kind of vague. So the board here voted to approve our modification if we removed the request to add those 2 lots from the application, which we did. So Phase 2 was modified without these 2 lots, and then the plat was recorded. Now we've come back that the plat has been recorded, worked out the concerns and the issues of drainage, erosion, what the property would look like, and that's the point of this application, is to get these 2 lots back on the recorded plat. They were originally developed as lots. They had all the utilities installed, and they just need to be recorded. And I brought some handouts here for the board. There's my card. And one of the things that's been brought up before is there were people that have been to the ZAG and had questions about what we were doing, and they wanted to see what it looked like that the board was seeing, whether it was the ZAG or the Board of Commissioners. So I brought a big display here that I'm just going to hold up, so if anybody in the audience wants to see it. And this is just, thank you, this is just a large version of what I've handed out for y'all. If you look in the picture that's in the middle on the left, that shows what one of the lots, lot 55, looks like. Lot 54 is shown on the bottom left corner. It's not the best picture, but they're essentially mirror images of each other. They fall from left to right or right to left. And that's the way the lots look today. As you can see, the erosion has been maintained. The other pictures to the right bottom, and even the bottom left one show where the silt fence is, where that silt fence has protected any erosion from going into the wetlands or floodplain that's adjacent to this property. The picture on top shows what the lot will actually look like when the house is built. If you see the red line as it goes horizontal across the front of the house, slopes down at about a 45-degree angle, and then gently slopes off to the right, that's image of the way the ground looks on lot 55 right now, and a mirror image of lot 54 across the street. You can see in the center left picture how the ground slopes down, goes level, and slopes down again. When the house is built, it would look like the house on the left with the retaining wall holding up the high side of the dirt, and then the ground is pretty much level off to the right side. The question or concern has been that there might be erosion or siltation into the floodplain. These lots, when they're built on, will be sodded just like the yards that you see, so the Bermuda sod prevents erosion, and most of the water is being directed to the street and not off-site into the floodplain or wetlands that are off to the right. The other image that you have looks like kind of like a plat. It's got blue arrows. That shows where the water's going. As you can see, most of the water goes to the street, especially the water uphill from these lots. There's other drawings that were submitted as part of the application that show a front elevation profile of the house that shows how the house relates to the floodplain and the elevation. Both houses sit, the finished floor elevation of these houses is about 14 to 15 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So they're well above the minimum of 5 foot above the 100-year floodplain. Planning and zoning recommended approval. The ZAG board recommended denial. I think their concern was of erosion, and that's why we presented these pictures here tonight to show that we have silt fence up. The silt fence is our erosion control measures are professionally maintained by an erosion control company that visits the site if there's more than ½ an inch of rain in a 24-hour period. We've been in compliance, have had no violations, and there are no open items in the community and specifically on these lots. So I would request that, I'm here to answer any questions and request for approval. If there are any questions and I don't get approval, that it be tabled and get back to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from board members? Any questions? All right. Are there any questions from any audience member? Anybody like to speak? Please come forward, ma'am.
Hello, Chairman, to the board. Latanya Jean Funny, unincorporated Clayton, Hampton. I'm not familiar with this particular case, but as a new homeowner myself, my concern is that this is the final plot on this particular subdivision, and I would like to know from the builder, like, have they contacted any of the residents to let them know what their plan is about this area? Because I think the residents should come in and say, well, every time it rains, this is what happens on that land, because they live there every day. And when you just have a developer here and you don't have anyone that already lives in the subdivision, you really don't get a good idea of what's going on in that particular subdivision. I also would like to know, when the other people bought their houses, was this sold as green space? So if it was sold as green space, and now you're, the developers here saying, now we want to build a house on it, well, people might want to look out their window and just see some trees and not see what their neighbors are cooking. So I just, just transparency, that, I would like to know these questions. Do the other residents in the subdivision know what the developers are requesting today? Thank you.
Okay. Let me comment on that.
Commissioner.
Yes, we do have residents here from that community, and we have met with the developers on several occasions, and I believe the residents have also met with the developers also. And this property was started, I guess, 2005, 4, something, long time ago. So it was already in the process of being built, and the economy and all flopped for a while, so it's been sitting dormant for years and all. And I believe you all purchased, what, a year or two ago?
Yes, ma'am. We purchased it last
So
year.
the community does know, and we've been out with, I think at one time we had about 6 or 8 residents and all, and I understand that they've met in the last several weeks too. And I know we have a resident now that's probably gonna speak. Don't know that, but.
Well, she indicated that she wanted to.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
One thing I would like to say is that we're not going to be doing any additional clearing. When I said that these lots were developed 12 years ago, when I say developed, that means they were cleared and graded, the earth was shaped, and the curb and gutter was put in, and all the utilities. So it's not like we're going into some open space area to create additional lots. These were already lots when the community was initially developed, and through a zoning matter, they were removed as lots, and now we're just asking that they be replaced back as lots, and want to indicate, show that we've addressed the erosion issues or concerns of erosion, and that we're well above the floodplain, and all those concerns that we've attempted to address them.
Okay, and for the record, do we have that about the Bermuda sod and all? Is that on record?
It is.
That you,
it's
okay.
On the site. It's actually in the handout that was submitted with the application. It says, I think the zoning requires that the entire yard be sodded, but we added it to those notes on those site plans.
Great. And thank you for your comment, because I am dealing with the neighborhood, just like that was built 25, 30 years ago, and that's exactly what happened at that time. So,
Commissioner Warner, you had a
I just had a quick question, and it's about that retention wall that I'm looking at. Do you have that in any of your other subdivisions, and if you do, where?
Just about every subdivision we have has
Okay.
that. It's actually, that's called a subwall.
Subwall, I apologize.
And that's part of the house. Now, on this lot, the wall may not come out as far towards the street as this one
It's just
does,
this part.
because this house actually sits a little bit below the curb. I couldn't take a picture of something that looked exactly like this will look, because we don't have it out there. In this case, the house sits, you can tell it's above the street.
Okay.
The house that we're gonna build, these houses that we're gonna build are gonna sit maybe a foot or two below the street. So that subwall that you see coming off the right side of the picture of the actual house will not come out as far. And if there's any slope in front of the wall, it'd be an area probably smaller than in between us here that would have pine straw on it and shrubs that just because you can't put sod on a slope that's too steep, so there'll be a small section that'll be landscaped with pine straw and shrubs that won't erode. It's not just putting out seed and straw that runs away after a while.
All right, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Ma'am?
I would, sir.
Hold on a second, no, okay. Come on up, Mr. Garber.
Mickey Garber, unincorporated, Rex, Georgia. This issue is not in my district. However, Clayton County is, and we're all in this boat together. Let me say that Planning and Zoning, Ms. Hambrick, approved it. ZAG denied it on the reason of soil erosion and possible flooding. The gentleman talks about sodding, absorbing some runoff. Let me remind you that sod is a living, breathing plant subject to death. And what you have is bare earth. It's how that sod is taken care of. You may, ma'am, approve the zoning. Let me remind you, just last week, 12 people in an apartment got flooded out, lost all their belongings. I will let you approve this zoning if you're willing to put your name on the properties around it, protecting those people. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak, ma'am?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Deborah Hodge. I live at 1600 Coronet Drive, Riverdale, Georgia. Mrs. Butler and I have been going back and forth, and on this said property, which abuts my property, I have the luxury of looking directly into the parcels that are in contention today. A week ago, I saw him meeting with Commissioner Hambrick and Keith. And Mr. Butler came across after your meeting and had a talk with me about this. I still have concern. I have mixed feelings about it. And my biggest concern is the erosion. And I think that's why ZAG denied it, is about the erosion. If Mr. Butler and Commissioner Hambrick could assure me that there would not be a runoff or an erosion to take place, it depends on how you vote tonight, will let me know what you think about these two particular lots in question. I still have concerns, but if it goes forward, I'm not against development, as I told Mr. Butler. I'm not against development. That's inevitable. It has to go. Development is taking place. But these two lots, I am concerned about the erosion to take place. As a former gentleman said, yes, grass grows. It depends on how the homeowner upkeeps their property. There's no guarantee that whoever gets that property would upkeep it to that standard, would know the history and know what complications there are and how to maintain it to avoid erosion. I had to put up a retaining wall in my backyard because of erosion. I planted a beautiful lawn one year, and the next year rain came and washed my lawn away in the back. I had to put up a retaining wall. So these are things that whoever is purchasing that lot would have to be very aware of and know how to maintain that property. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
I would like for Keith to come forward because he did have a suggestion. I believe we talked about this, Mr. Butler, about the wall. Was that mentioned? We talked about the sod and perhaps some kind of wall or whatever. What was that you were suggesting?
Keith Parker, unincorporated, Clayton County. There was a suggestion, if not the sod, then there could be potentially a hardscape, which would mean we would construct landscape out of rocks that wouldn't be movable under any condition whatsoever. So that way you wouldn't have to worry about the maintenance nor the washing away of the soil. That could be an option if the grass is not acceptable.
And that would prevent further erosion.
That's correct.
Could we have both? I guess.
Yeah.
Mr. Butler?
On the downslope is where you go hardscape with all rock instead of any kind of new sod or any of the sides.
Are you talking on there? Can you show me where oh, yeah, over to the property line? Yeah, yeah, that'll work.
Make that a condition.
Okay.
So just to let everybody know what Keith was talking about, at the bottom of the subwall, there's still a little bit of a slope. If you look at your image, you can see the land slopes off to the right a little bit, and on the lot across the street, it would slope off to the left. We could put rock down there instead of sod. That way, and actually, I like that idea. That way the homeowner, it's only a few feet of property before it butts up to the open space that's next door, and then there wouldn't be any grass down there to mow. It'd just be like a 5-foot strip at the bottom of that wall.
Okay, but you're still gonna have some sod, right?
Oh, the whole yard will
Okay,
be sodded
okay.
except for that little area at the bottom of the wall.
Okay.
That we would put rock down there, and that, yeah, that's a good idea. That rock doesn't wear out, at least not very quickly, and then that would eliminate the need for the homeowner to mow it. But as far as the durability of the sod, Bermuda sod's very durable here. As long as it gets sunlight and it's mowed, then it'll be fine. The homeowners association is responsible for making sure that the homeowners maintain their property. If they don't, then the homeowners association can use self-help and go out there and maintain the yard themselves, and then put a lien against the property. If it typically shouldn't get to that point, but if need be, the homeowners association can take over the maintenance and prevent any erosion. And I would like to keep in mind that there's no houses downstream from this property. These two lots are at the bottom of the hill. They're not at the top shedding water on the other people. They're at the bottom of the hill, below all of the neighbors in the community behind it, and obviously downhill from the other houses in this community. And like I'd just like to mention again, it's lots that were already developed. We're not doing anything new other than asking that they be added back to the plat, and we feel like we've addressed any erosion issues. We have silt fence in place. We've got, I've got a log here if anybody wants to see it, but it shows that that it's been checked every time it's rained more than ½ an inch, and if anything needed to be addressed, like cleaning out the silt fence, it has been. There's not been any silt get into the wetlands downstream, and once the houses are built, the silt fence gets removed and the yard's sodded or has a little bit of rock added, like Keith mentioned. So.
Okay, so can we go on record with the rock?
Well, when we get to the
Fine.
part where your recommendation, you can make that as a condition. Anybody else want to speak?
Yes, sir. Jeffrey Benoit, Clayton County. I see that they're fighting very vigorously for this approval for this zoning, even though it's been disapproved. And that's going to be up to this board. However, the problem comes in the unsuspected resident that may end up owning this property, pouring their life savings into trying to own a property. So what I would ask for this board to do as a precursor to that is make sure that there is a pre-disclosure in the selling of this home that this property is subject to flooding. This property may be subject to soil erosion. Whatever the subject problems is with this property, they ought to be a part of this decision that this developer and this realtor make sure whatever anybody that decides to buy this, they know up front what they're getting into, because it doesn't need something they find out in the first reign. So if we're going to approve this, let's approve it with preambles that there is a pre-disclosure that the realtors have to let them know, and the developers have to let them know that everybody on board knows what they're getting. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Now, I could be wrong, but I think that's part of all the disclosure forms that you have to sign up front anyway. Yes, sir. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to say this property is not subject to flooding and erosion. It hasn't flooded, and there hasn't been erosion. But to understand the noted, I guess second of all, this lot is really no different than any lot other in the community that slopes from left to right or right to left. The difference is that it was removed from the plat. But with it being adjacent to a wetlands and a 100-year floodplain, what we will have to do or required to do is get a letter of map amendment from FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association. And they verified that the property is it has to be at least 5 feet above the 100-year floodplain. These houses are 15 feet above it. They're 3 times the minimum. But that letter of map amendment will be done, and what that does is lets the homeowners know that it's been studied and that they don't have to have flood insurance because of the letter of map amendment. And that will be done as soon as we get the house built. But we can't do it until the house is built before they can come out and survey it. Once that's done, then they'll verify that it's out of the floodplain, and we haven't increased any of the floodplain with what we've done. But we can't do that until we've built the house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hambrick.
Yes, I recommend approval with the addition of the rocks at the bottom of the property.
What's the, is there a formal name for that?
I would just say that we'll install rocks at the bottom of the subwall adjacent to the property line. That way, if you look back at that image, the very top image, you'll see where there's a subwall, and then there's about 10 or 15 feet of space between the houses. There's a property line in between those 2 houses. We won't put the rocks over the property line into the natural area, open space that's next to it, so they would be between the wall and the open space.
Okay, specifically state that.
Okay, with the motion will include an addition of the rocks at the bottom of the property, the bottom of the hill, adjacent to the subwall.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Comments? Hearing none. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4-1, it passes.
We do need a very short executive session for 2 litigation matters.
All right, there's no other business for us. We have a request going to executive session for litigation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. All right, motion to reconvene.
So moved.
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Well, I made the motion. You make the second. It's unanimous. Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Chairman, the board had authorized us to enter into settlement negotiations with Janet Asbury resulting from an automobile collision that occurred in April 4th, 2017 on Old Dixie and Forest Parkway with a county vehicle. The county was responsible for the collision. There was $7,000 in medical expenses. We were able to settle the case for $9,000. We have a settlement agreement executed by Ms. Asbury. We just need your approval of it formally, and we'll put it on the record.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner Gregory, second. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Good night.